All right. What do we have here? Reuters. U.S. judge issues nationwide injunction blocking Trump passport policy targeting transgender people. Nice. Very cool. If I were to take an assumption, more than likely, this is probably in relation to the executive order that he probably signed saying trans people don't deserve to exist or some shit. I'm being a little hyperbolic when I say that, but that's a victory for sure. More than likely, if I were to guess, it's about how they can identify. They can choose how they want to identify on their fucking passport if they want to identify as female or male, despite being the opposite gender as to what they were at birth, kind of a deal, right? Because Trump administration in particular, they have like particular conniptions with trans people because of course they do blah 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 blah. But where there is some good news, there's obviously bad news. So the Trump administration is shutting down the National LGBTQ plus Youth Suicide Lifeline on July 17th. Let me see if we can find something about that. Something quick. Trump shutting down the National LGBTQ Youth Hotline. LGBTQ Youth Hotline. Well, the suicide hotline. Just grab something real quick. Trump administration has shut down LGBTQ youth hotlines. So the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline will no longer use its LGBTQ youth service starting July 17th. The Trump administration says the move will focus on serving all help seekers. That's really fucking funny because that's kind of the point. Like, the suicide hotline is not gonna be changed, generally speaking. Is that like is 988 the sort of general suicide hotline? Let me double check that, right, I'm not 100% certain. What is 988? Yeah, it's the general suicide hotline, right? Okay, that's what I figured. So what is exactly the point of this? They are helping everyone already. Are they like just taking away the LGBTQ youth suicide hotline? It should be fairly obvious what the point of this is. It's just for like just callousness against youth, hatred of children. Because again, I've had this take before. Conservatives do not believe that children are human. They see them as simulacra or homunculi for them to imprint their own will upon. Or not imprint, just impose their own will upon. They don't see them as human, broadly speaking. We're keeping it a $1.50. Like, they don't see our children as humans. But wouldn't expect anything less from the callous cruelty of conservatives. But what can you do? Trump administration will shut down the National LGBTQ Suicide Hotline in 30 days. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SMASHA, whatever, announced Tuesday that the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline will no longer use its LGBTQ youth services, also known as the Press 3 option, effective July 17th. So let's really be fucking honest here, okay? The only reason why Trump is doing this is because he's decided to go along with the idiotic delusions of all the people that are around him to use trans people as a football for, policy, right? To not have to do policy, to ignore people from the fact that the big beautiful bill is as dog shit as it is. That's more or less the point of doing this. And also, again, they don't consider children to be human. Conservatives don't think children have humanity. They don't think they have wills. They don't think they have consciousness. They think of them as simply an automata that is meant to sort of just have instructions printed on them. But as expected, of course. Agency said it will no longer silo LGBT plus youth services, notably removing the T representing the trans community in its initialism to focus on serving all help seekers. including those previously served through the Press 3 option. They were already, like, that wasn't a problem to begin with. Like, quite literally, if we're talking about, seeking help for all help seekers or whatever, this executive order is meant to just do the exact opposite of that, destroy your fucking mission. So that's pretty cool. Press 3 option rolled out as a pilot program in 2022 in a government contract with the Trevor Project, a suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization for LGBTQ people. Those in need of help would call 988 and be given the option to press 3 to connect with counselors trained to assist people up to the age of 25. The Trevor Project was initially the sole provider of the youth specialized service, and it is now one of 7 centers that make up the LGBTQ youth subnetwork. But again, as we all know, conservatives hate children and just want them to suffer. Very cool. Came about under legislation President Trump signed during his first term that acknowledged disproportionately high suicide rates amongst LGBTQ youths. Interesting. But again, now that we have to do the whole culture war, 3IQ, red meat fucking bullshit, Trump has to go along with the fucking schizophrenic conservatives saying like, yeah, dude, honestly, I think those transes need to keep killing themselves more and more. As expected from the callous cruelty of fucking conservatives. Smasha insisted that affected youths could still receive help, but far from the general hotline number. Everyone who contacts the 988 Lifeline will continue to receive access to skilled, caring, culturally competent crisis counselors who can help with suicidal, substance misuse, or mental health crises, or any other kind of emotional distress. Anyone who calls the Lifeline will continue to receive compassion and help, the agency said. Trevor Project CEO James Black called the decision devastating, adding, suicide prevention is about people, not politics. Couldn't have said it any better myself, James. But, we got JD Vance, very cool, talking about trans people. Well, what do you have here? Hello, blue sky. Blue guy. What the? I've been told this app has become the place to go for common sense political discussion and analysis. Yeah, you definitely believe that. So I'm thrilled to be here to engage with all of you. So what do we have here? There are several problems with appealing and deferring to the authority of the expert class. First, so-called experts have no license to countermand the wisdom, fairness, or logic of legislative choices. FCC for Beach Communications. Oh, so this is like what, some Supreme Court bullshit, right? Concurrence on medical care for transgender youth quite illuminating. He argues that many of our so-called experts have used back arguments in substandard science to push experimental therapies on our youth. Yeah, that's totally something that's really happening, JD Vance. Yeah, for sure. What the fuck are you talking about? This has been fucking researched and corroborated by I don't know how many fucking health institutions at this point. Hundreds, dozens at the very least, if not fucking hundreds of them have said like, no, it is trans affirming to give youths the necessary care that they need if they are trans youth. Like, it's very stupid. But then again, schizophrenics who have no idea about anything, or rather that they don't have any idea about how anything works, but also, let's be fucking honest here, it's all culture war fucking bullshit to throw red meat at the simpering fucking morons being like, yeah, we have to kill the transes, and besides the fact that they all tend to fetishize trans people all the fucking time, that's a whole fucking different story and meme at this point. But more so what? Again, conservatives and Republicans do this all the time, constantly, for one reason and one reason only. They have to come up with bullshit excuses and scapegoats to distract people from the fact that their legislative agenda is bad. Keep in mind what's currently going on. Oh, the Israel-Iran attacks. They're still fucking attacking each other at this point, okay? Like, and broadly speaking, there are huge infighting. There's a lot of infighting that's going on currently within the sort of MAGA sphere, between like isolationist, more Nazi-esque sort of Republicans and the sort of more neoconservative, globalist conservatives. Neoconservative, globalist, whatever. You know what I mean. the more like neocon conservatives saying like, yeah, well, we have to help Israel because they're like our heckin' super based epic arena people. Very cool. Yada yada yada. We know the meme, right? There's a current feud that's going on between those two particular sides and factions. We all know the Tucker Carlson interview with Ted Cruz. Blah 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 blah. That's a whole fucking shebang shabong, complete utter shit show. And guess what? We need to have a distraction for that shit because it's causing infighting. I might add that many of those scientists are receiving substantial resources from Big Pharma to push these medicines on kids. What do you think? That's just not even true. Yeah, dude, Big Trans is lobbying pharma to push estradiol and other shit to fucking trans youth. Yeah, that's something that's really fucking happening. It's stupid. It's the whole argument that, oh, well, it's a $1 billion corporation fucking or industry transitioning, and it's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Even if that were the fucking case, do you really think that all the fucking trans people that are paying all the money for their goddamn transitioning would want to sort of deal with all the social stigmatization that fucking exists and would have to pay and want to pay all that fucking money to go through with transitioning? I mean, if they're desperate enough, yeah, that's more of a problem with privatized healthcare at that point. But do you really think they want to go spend that much money to deal with all the social stigmatization because it's a fucking fad or something? Because J.D. Vance, in reality, he thinks it's a fucking fad. It's ludicrous. But I think this is in reference to what? Supreme Court trans people. No, this is gonna be New York Times. Oh, are we gonna get shit on? Nope, nothing. Okay, cool. Highlights of the Supreme Court ruling on transgender care for minors. So there was a Tennessee law that was essentially banning, I think, care for transgender youth. Right? They tried to ban it. It went up. It got sued. It went up to the Supreme Court, obviously along partisan lines, because fucking, of course it did, because stupid culture war bullshit, nonsense, whatever. The Tennessee law was upheld, right? So essentially, this is to ban transgender sort of care for minors, basically for youth. So I assume that they're probably going to go after puberty blockers. I've talked about this before. Puberty blockers are not only used for transgender youth, they are also used for cis people who are going through precocious puberty. And conservatives, I know that words are very difficult for you people to understand, but precocious puberty is, whoa, you go through puberty too early. So puberty blockers are used for that. So not only, and it tends to be a lot of racialized minorities that tend to go through precocious puberty much more so. So not only is it transphobic, but it's also racist. Ah, very cool. Very, very cool. So the justices ruled that Tennessee's law, which prohibited some medical treatments for transgender youth, did not violate equal protections principles. So basically, the argument that was initially being held here is because since trans people are a protected class within, or are considered a protected class within the Constitution, what Tennessee here is doing is, well, unconstitutional, which I would probably agree with. But, since the conservatives are hacks and political partisans, obviously they do not agree with that. So here's the latest on the decision. The conservative majority on the Supreme Court on Wednesday voted to uphold the state ban prohibiting some medical treatments for transgender youth, shielding similar laws in more than 20 other states. Yeah, because a bunch of other states have also fucking goddamn put in a bunch of restrictions as well. And you know how it is with all these motherfucker conservative states with trigger laws. They put in the law, they want it to get sued, it goes through the courts, they want it to end up to the Supreme Court, and then guess what? The Supreme Court will rule on it. More than likely it will be favorable in favor of the conservative states because of the conservative majority that currently exists in the fucking goddamn Supreme Court. And as a result, whoa crazy, what's gonna fucking happen? Well, it should be fairly fucking obvious. All those trigger laws will immediately trigger as soon as the Supreme Court puts in their decision. That's the point. Chief Justice John Roberts, part of the 6-3 majority, acknowledged the fierce scientific and policy debates about the safety, efficacy, and propriety of medical treatments in an evolving field. But he wrote in the majority opinion that these questions should be resolved by the people, their elected representatives, and the democratic process. Fucking stupid, very dumb. Like, why the fuck should this be they're trying to make the fucking stupid states' rights fucking argument when that's not the fucking people who should be resolving these issues. It is up to medical professionals, and medical professionals are in consensus that you are supposed to give trans youths the care that they need. But again, like I've said before, conservatives hate children. They see them as nothing other than homunculi, as simulacra for them to impose and imprint their ideologies upon. They do not see them as actual humans. They do not they acknowledge that they have their own consciousness, their own wills, their own lives, their own decisions that they can make. They in fact hate that fact because, again, first most important root basis for all conservative thought, maintenance of hierarchy and control. And obviously that extends also to children. Obviously, they want to be the only authoritative voices that exist in the lives of children. That's it. Why do you think they are like so pro homeschooling and stuff like that? So vehemently against sending people to public education? Should be fairly fucking obvious, you know, because they want to be the ones that, of course, well, you know, the only voices that give wisdom or like are able to order their children around. That's the whole point. For Tennessee's transgender families, the court ruling was bitter but expected. There had been some joy this June. There were events timed with Pride Month with families and friends gathered with rainbow tattoos, unexpected legal stuff, blah, 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 blah. Democrats' wary response to the transgender ruling shows the party's retreat. Yes, the Democrats are very pathetic. Like I've said before on every fucking issue, the only reason why the Republicans are more effective in terms of, well, attacking trans people more and more so is because the Democratic Party is completely callous, afraid, idiotic morons who do not fucking actually give much of a shit about the minorities that they purport to actually care about. They are willing to just completely fucking goddamn retreat and not do anything. But, you know, I shouldn't be really surprised at all here by fucking goddamn Democrats that they're unwilling to do anything about any of this stuff because, again, for these motherfuckers, doing nothing is their only modus operandi that exists. So, like, well, obviously they're not going to put up an effective resistance to any of this stuff. So, what? Leading Democrats offered a show trickle of critical reaction on Wednesday to the Supreme Court's decision upholding a state ban on some transgender care for youths, underscoring the new discomfort on the issue from a party that has long seen itself as a champion of LGBTQ Americans. Hours after the ruling arrived, some senators, like Chuck Schumer of New York, the minority leader, has denounced the decision as part of a cruel crusade against trans Americans. Okay, so you should just sue the administration for fucking doing shit like this. Just sue them. Countersue. There's options that you have. Legislation that you could pass. You could do stuff, but no. They're not going to do anything. Whatever. Especially considering the current makeup of the House and the Senate. They're not going to do shit, so. I don't think there's really much else to say here, right? Besides what? We all know why fucking Republicans hate LGBTQ youth. Right? Shouldn't be it shouldn't be very complicated other than this. The only reason why they are doing stuff like this is because A, it's a culture war issue that they could throw red meat to their base on to distract them from the fact that the big beautiful bill is as dog shit as it is, and also the fact that currently the Iranians and the Israelis are currently at war with each other. So again, red meat to the base, distract them from this to stop infighting so the Republicans can continue to pass their pro-oligarch, callous, cruel agenda that no one actually supports if they actually look at it. But, you know, Republican voters are unfortunately fucking morons, dupes, and are easy to fool. So, they're just going to talk about this instead and just get easily fucking distracted. Talk about people that they'll probably never meet in their lives, that will never have any effect on them. And as always, the cruelty is the fucking point. And it's all about maintenance and hierarchy of control for conservatives. Because again, like I've been saying before, throughout this whole entire spiel at this point, conservatives do not see children as human. They see them as homunculi, simulacra, automata, for them to basically impose and imprint particular ideology and code into them, because they do not see them as their own person. Shouldn't really get any fucking harder than that, to be honest.